Our theme for this month is forgiveness and healing and that subject matter. I always have Bishop teach this stuff because he's really good at it. He's got more series that he's developed, sermon series that he's developed on this subject probably than I have in my entire stash of sermons. So usually Bishop is preaching on a Sunday morning, but I have one good message, I think, about healing and forgiveness. I guess that's one of those places I've got to kind of push myself and grow a little bit. We're going to go to Mark chapter 5. We're going to read verses 25 through 34. And I'm hoping that with this message, this is going to be one of those ones that as I preach this, I'm preaching to you, yes, but just rest assured, I'm probably preaching to me too. That happens a lot in the life of a pastor, and this is one of those ones where I see I still got stuff to work on. Start with verse 25. It says, "And a certain woman which had an issue of blood 12 years, and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse." Now, rhetorical question, I don't need any answers, but I know that there's probably a few that are in here that have been to doctor after doctor after doctor for medical issues that the experts couldn't figure out because they're still practicing. It's telling us that she spent all that she had. And if anybody's ever paid a medical bill, you understand that. You give them everything you have, and was nothing bettered. So she wasn't doing any better. She still had the same issue, only her situation was worse because now she's broke. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind and touched his garment. For she said, "If I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole." Now you tell me, according to Scripture, where she got the idea that if I could just touch his clothes, I'll have a healing. Because there's nothing there to support that. What it was an act of faith, that she thought that the power of the Lord was so strong that all she had to do was get close enough to touch his garment. She had been to all the doctors. She had spent all the money. She hadn't received any help. Everything was the way that it was before, but worse. But when she heard of Jesus, you want to know why I'm pushing so hard for you to talk to somebody and tell them about Jesus? Because there's all kinds of people out there that need the help of God. And when they heard about Jesus, everything changes. Verse 29, "And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, 'Who touched my clothes?' And his disciples said unto him, 'Thou seest the multitude.'" They're saying, "Lord, you know that we are in the middle of a crowd." This is like me and Bishop when we go to like conference or something. We're like, "Who touched me?" He's like, "Everybody." No, don't touch me. No, Jesus is not a touch me not. That's me. But it says that immediately knowing in himself that the virtue had gone out of him, turned him and pressed and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And they said unto him, "Thou seest the multitude thronging thee. You're surrounded. And sayest thou, Who touched me?" There were a lot of people there today, but that woman, that was different. It was her faith that touched him. And he looked around about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing what was done in her, came and fell down before him and told him all the truth. And he said unto her, "Daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy plague." This woman had an issue. The Bible calls it an issue of blood. Only Jesus could do anything about it. And she knew that because she tried everything else. Her issue was a physical need, but she determined in herself two things: that only Jesus could help her, and she didn't want to live that way anymore. I want that part to be clear as I'm preaching today. You may have an issue in your life, and you may know that only Jesus can help you, but you also got to come to the realization, I don't want to live this way anymore. We all, as we come to church and we do life the way that we do, we all have issues. We've all heard it. He's a good kid, but he has issues. That coworker that I have that drives me crazy, they're not too bad. They would do just fine, but they have issues. The guy, he would make a good usher, or he could preach, or she could teach Sunday school, or they could do this, but they have too many issues. And honestly, we can talk about each other and point out the issues. But just for a few minutes today, as we're talking about subjects of healing and forgiveness and all of that stuff, that we, instead of starting to look across the aisle at who else is sitting in here and who else might need this message, that we start taking a deep look inside of ourselves at our own issues. Hear me, please. We all have secret issues that plague us. And as soon as I said that thing that popped into your mind, that thing that you don't want other people to know about, that thing that drives you crazy, that habit that you can't control, that's an issue. We all have them. From the best in the house today to the absolute worst. We're all on a level playing field with Jesus when it comes to our issues. Just because you can't see somebody's issue doesn't mean they ain't got them. I have mine and you have yours. Those guarded parts of our heart that not even Jesus has access to. That is where the issues lie. Now here's the problem with having these issues, is they block our progress. They diminish our praise. They distract us from the work of God. And I think probably the worst thing of all is they isolate us from the kingdom of God. The lady that we read about this morning from our text, it was a physical thing, but nonetheless, it was an issue. She couldn't do anything. She was unable to go on with a productive life because she had an issue. She couldn't be emotionally and spiritually healthy because she had an issue. We sometimes, as people, we come to church and we're a bunch of liars. We come into the house of God and then comes the question by some innocent bystander, how are you doing today? And we answer the same way, well, I'm great, I'm blessed, I'm living abundantly, everything's just peachy, I love how life is going, and we're lying through our teeth. We lie because we want to cover it up. And I don't mean to promote that we wear our hearts on our sleeve, but maybe a little more honesty. We can't just land on everyone that inquires about our day, but if we're honest, we all have an issue of some sort or another. We can compare them to see who has the biggest issue, but in reality, we're all in the same boat of suffering as we wrestle with those problems. We all have issues. We struggle with them, trying to get things under subjection. I mean, let's be honest. And I'm not trying to make people uncomfortable, but let's just be honest about it. We struggle to put some things under subjection. We come to God and you know, we may not, I hate to even name anything, but it's like, we may not drink anymore. We may not do drugs anymore. But there's this one thing that I'm hanging on to, and that the Lord understands. And His grace and mercy, and I'm just going to deal with this issue. And we tuck that part away, and we're not going to tell people about that. We're not going to be as public about that because deliverance didn't come like we wanted it to at first. And now we're stuck with this issue. And it rules our worship. It rules over our prayer life and our devotion. And it rules over our church attendance and controls our connections with other people. And you can call the pastor or the bishop when it gets really heavy. And maybe like David played the harp for Saul, they can console you a little bit and make you feel a little bit better. But it doesn't take away the issue. The problem is that even after the pastor and the bishop or anybody else in ministry, they get done, the problem is that the issue is still there. We got to come to the realization, just like that lady did, that only Jesus can help, and I don't want to live this way anymore. You don't sing some issues away. You don't counsel some issues away. You don't go to church to remove some issues. Money and medication don't take care of some issues. Doctors and drugs can't fix some issues. Friends can't fix some issues. Preachers and pastors, as good as we are, we cannot fix the issues. But Jesus Christ has the virtue, the power, the ability to take care of those issues. I cannot tell you how many times that I have been at my home and I'm talking to somebody and I'm thinking about individuals that attend this church and I feel it starting in my chest, and then and then there's this emotional reaction as I think about they're lost. I want them to know Jesus. And I start to just break down because I know that if they just understood with all the issues that they're carrying around, all the heartache, the pain, the torment, the turmoil, and everything else that they're carrying around with them, that if they would just let Jesus have an opportunity, He could wipe out all of that. A little bit of virtue, just touching the hem of His garment. It doesn't even have to be a big thing for the Lord. It's a small thing for Him to do this for us. But we sit and we wait for a healing that isn't coming because we don't press through to touch the hem of that garment. If you as an individual will pray and determine in yourself that the only answer to those issues is to seek God and to simply touch Him, He will be faithful and take care of those issues. Jesus, here's the thing that you got to know when you're talking about the woman with the issue of blood. When she pressed through that crowd, do you know where Jesus was going? Because if you read it, He's on the move. He's going somewhere. Anybody have any idea where He's going? He was purposely it was a rich guy. He was purposely on his way to a rich guy's house to heal that guy's kid. That lady wasn't even on the docket for the day. You may not even be on the Lord's radar with that kind of stuff. And He says, oh, hey, I got time for you too. Just like the lady that we read about this morning. 2 realizations to experience. Only Jesus can take care of this, and I don't want to live with it anymore. I believe we have to reach out to Jesus, get in His presence. It's not just where we sit and wait for the Lord to just roll down and just bless our life. It takes us pressing through the crowd. We have to push past the distractions, the white noise of our life. We got to push past all of the things that are bothering us. She still had the issue of blood as she's traveling through the crowd, and she's still unclean and all that business. She presses through that crowd just to get a touch of the garment. Only Jesus can take care of some of the issues that we're dealing with today. I'm going to tell you, not all issues are bad things. Some issues are a good thing. That's hard to deal with. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 7 through 9. Apostle Paul wrote, "And lest I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan, to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, than the power of Christ may rest upon me." What he's telling us is, he says, hey, he says, the Lord didn't take this problem away. I deal with it every day, but his grace is sufficient to take care of me. 3 times he asked God to fix it. And instead, God gave him the strength he needed and the grace to overcome that issue. Not all issues are bad because they bring you to Jesus. Sometimes we hate the issues, public or secret, because they make us feel weak and powerless. But this is the place where God can use us the most. The glory isn't ours. It is his. Most of you know Destiny right now is up at ABI. And she messaged me. She says, "Hey, I'm preaching in this service." I'm like, well, that's great. She says, "I'm nervous." I said, "Well, send me your notes." Wonderful job. I wish that I could have been there to hear her preach it. But in the conversation, we're talking. I told her, "Destiny, you're at Bible school. There are a lot of preachers there. There's going to be some that are good and some that aren't. And as much as it's good to perfect your craft and do it the best that you possibly can, your job is not to get up there and preach a general conference message. Your job is to get up there and to distribute the gospel. You make sure that the first thing that you're trying to do is bring Jesus to somebody else's life. That's it." And I found that when we start to understand that it's not about us, it's not about what we can do, then we open up a whole new world for the Lord to operate through us. In my weakness, when my issue is in control, when things aren't as good as they should be, he is made strong. There are so many in Scripture that had an issue. This may ruin church for some of you, but there's so many in Scripture that had an issue, and God used them anyways. So when I read this list, I want you to understand, when you see something that doesn't look quite right, that I've allowed somebody to do something and maybe they're not up to par in your eyes, I don't really care. I'm wanting to touch. I'm not wanting to change any kind of doctrine or anything like that, but I do want to give people an opportunity in this house for the Lord to use them and to be a part of what God is doing, okay? That's just a little side note. But here's a list, okay? Moses stuttered and had a really bad temper. David had an affair. John Mark felt rejected and he wasn't good enough. Hosea, the prophet, married a prostitute. Jacob was a liar and a crook. Peter talked too much and acted too quickly, was belligerent. Naomi was a widow. Jonah was prejudiced, some say racist. Miriam gossiped too much. That's a common problem. Gideon and Thomas both doubted. Jeremiah cried too much and was depressed. Elijah was stressed out and suicidal. John the Baptist was rude and offensive. Martha worried too much. Mary was lazy. Noah drank too much. Their name is in the book because they took their issues and handed it over to God. They didn't know what to do, possibly, but God had the answers. So today I ask, what is your issue? You can sit here and tell me, well, this is my issue. I can't do this. I can't live for God. I can't be what God has called me to be because I have this issue. But I'm here to tell you that in spite of our issues, God decides to save us, to work with us, and to use us anyways. I'm not up here because I'm without issue. I'm up here because, and even with issues, I can hand those over to God, and He's going to to say, all right, Phil, we got a job to do. And in your weakness, when you can't seem to get it right, when you feel like you're not good enough, when you have all these things come down the pipe at you, just step aside and let my glory be known. Here's my message about healing and forgiveness. 1, the Bible says He's faithful and just to forgive us. You don't have to walk around with unforgiven sin. Repentance is a pretty easy thing to understand. All of the wounds and all of the issues and all of the things that you carry around, I'm telling you that today you can approach an altar where the only thing I'm going to do is pray with you, and that's it. The Lord will be the one to take care of issues. But if you'll walk to an altar this morning and you will give God the ability to touch your life and let Him into that secret part of your heart that nobody gets to know about, what kind of story will be written about you? Jen, I'm about to close. You may be sitting in here thinking, well, that's good for everybody else, but I'm not even on the docket today. Neither was she. She was not scheduled for the healing that day. It was some rich guy's kid. She was just the woman with an issue. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a church service thinking, man, I'm just the guy that can't get it together. I'm the kid that's going to go to every church camp and come home worse than what I left for camp in. I'm the guy that's just never going to get it right. And in spite of not getting it right, the Lord's saying, okay, we're going to take another step. And then another one. And then another one. And I'm watching. And I've had people in our community that have said, man, from where you were to where you are now, this is unbelievable. But God did this. Now, here's where we make it a part of choice. You have a choice. Go home, tear-stained face, and live the same life with the same issues. Or come to an altar today and let the Lord touch you and walk out changed and whole and working on something new. I'm glad that the Lord loved me in my damaged, broken, terrible state, but I'm glad that He loved me enough not to leave me that way. And He'll do the same for everyone in this house today. If you'll all stand, this altar is open.